There we go.
Hello everyone. I'm Dr. Natasha,
Hi, I'm Neeyaz.
and this is our special guest today, Dr. Aumatma. Dr. Aumatma, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Aumatma. I'm a naturopathic doctor and endocrinologist, and I specialize in fertility and all things hormones and women's health. And I'm really excited to be with you all today.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to invite Dr. Aumatma here. I've interviewed her before on the Healing Hashimoto Summit in, I think that was 2017. It was several years ago. So we met many years ago online, and then we met in person a bunch. And so she's got a lot of fun stuff to share with us, and is one of the greatest brains I know in holistic women's health. She knows a lot of mind body stuff. So we're really excited to get to know her and dive into holistic and mind body women's health. And so we're going to do, if you guys have joined us for past Canary calls where we have our monthly member call, sometimes we have like presentations and we'll just kind of have like a PowerPoint up. But since Dr. Aumatma has so many different things to talk about, and Neeyaz and I love this topic, we're going to do an interview conversation. And so if you guys are watching too, you can jump in, write comments, and ask questions, and we'll share your questions as well. So we'll just go ahead and get started.
Awesome.
Yay.
I love it. I love it.
I'm so excited. I was reading up on your bio and looking at your website and your Instagram like a couple of days ago, and I was like, I love this woman. She is incredible.
Aw.
So I would love to know what really inspired you to kind of devote your practice to women's health. Was that a natural progression, or did something happen in your life that kind of sparked that interest for you?
I think lots of things happened simultaneously, and it was just like getting to me from every angle. I had already been in practice in women, like mostly doing women's health all throughout, because I feel like more women are inclined to seek out natural means than men are. Maybe a weird generalization, but I find that that was generally true for my practice at least. And then it was about 4 years into my practice that I was essentially like in this relationship. I was actually married. And I was with this man who was starting to talk about children, and it freaked me out a little bit because I had not considered whether or not I wanted to have kids. And and then I realized, well, actually I do really want to have kids, but really not with this guy. And he would just keep like, kind of pushing it. And the more that he did that, the more I was like, oh God, I really married the wrong person. And what do I do now? Because I'm getting to that age where fertility is going to become an issue if I don't do
Right.
something about it. So it really like led me to diving into the research and being like, what else is there in terms of natural medicine that I could use as a resource and feel like I could leave that relationship, find someone else, and
Mm,
then have a baby when we were ready, or if and when. Um, but I wanted to like leave that opportunity open. I just wasn't really sure that I wanted to freeze my eggs, and I went through a whole bunch of like personal exploration very quickly because I was like, well, if I'm in the wrong, and we had issues outside of that. So it wasn't like
just that.
that was the thing that broke us up, but it really was like one of those, we're not even in a good place. I'm really sure
Mm,
that I don't want to have kids with you ever. What am I doing in this relationship?
Yeah.
And like I think I woke up, it was a birthday, probably like 7 or 8 years ago, that I was like, okay, this is it. Our relationship's over. You need to get out. He was like, what? And it like did it. Of course, we had been talking and counseling and all the things, but
yeah.
it was just like I knew in my body and in my intuition that it was completely the wrong choice. And I now jokingly call it my practice marriage. I'm happily married with a child.
Oh,
So I'm really glad how things worked out. But really, it was like as I was researching, I just kept getting more and more irate about the fact that doctors were just lying to women. I was like,
Mm,
why is it the only message that we hear about fertility is that our fertility magically drops off a cliff at 35?
mhm.
It's not actually true. It's based on research that came out in the 1800s.
Oh my
So, in no other
Wow.
field of medicine do we use research from the 1800s. Like,
Yeah.
it's really not relevant anymore.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's crazy because
We're in different times.
that age is like the point at which they label a woman geriatric in terms of her women's health. And I think when we're talking about the mind body implications of the language we use and the thoughts that we have about ourselves, it's such a like outdated and unfortunate way to think about people. And so I think that's really amazing that there are people like you who are educating about this is the way to understand what
Mhm.
women's health is about,
yeah.
the important markers to look at, the important like mindsets and thoughts to have around your ability to be healthy. And it's not just like a degenerative process from here after you hit a certain age.
Yeah. Yeah, and like yeah, we just not there's no this like drop off of a cliff at 35. Like nothing in our body happens that suddenly, right? Like diabetes forms over 15, 20 years. Heart
Mhm.
disease forms over the years. Nothing happens like, oh, instantaneously you get to a certain age and all of a sudden. And so I just, like in the context of holism or our whole bodies, like there's so much happening. And I'm not denying that there is a factor of age. Um, I don't ever say like, oh, age is not going to be a factor at all, but age is a factor that is more in our control as women than we really give ourselves credit for,
Right.
and doctors give us credit for, right?
Yeah.
So I went through my pregnancy. I remember going to the OBGYN visits, and my OB was constantly like, since you're geriatric age, we
Oh,
should really do these blah blah blah. And I would just the first time she said that, I was like, really, did you have to call me geriatric?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
she's like, well, I know you're a doctor, but I'm legally allowed, I have to call you geriatric because that
Wow.
is the technical label that
Wow.
our industry
Wow.
needs to put on women. And I was just like, I really wish that we could change the language around it.
Mhm.
And then she would like do the test, and she is consistently she was like, you're better than my 18-year-old pregnant women. Like you're doing really, really well. So
Yeah.
there was never any question of like, oh, is this pregnancy gonna be high risk or whatever? But
Mhm.
they automatically put you in that category, even if
Mm.
you're not in that place.
Yeah, and to go along with that, just talking about when you're talking about kind of that age and how it's not so much the number of the biological age, but more about how your physiology is working. And when we think about different types of testing and things like that, can you tell us like the top 5 tests that you think are really important that women look at to see how, optimal their women's health is, that maybe they've seen it in other realms or these are new tests to them. Can you tell us some of those top tests?
Yeah. So there are actually four, and we can add on a
Oh,
couple
sure.
more if we want, but four is a really good starting point. So the first one is called follicle stimulating hormone. That's the hormone that first it's usually about day 3 of our cycle that that hormone will start to be released. It comes out of our brain, it hits the ovaries, and it tells the ovaries, "Hey, time to produce some follicles," meaning eventually that'll turn into the egg that gets ovulated. But usually our body grows 15 to 20 follicles per cycle. So it'll start growing these follicles. And then as the follicles grow, the ovaries are actually releasing estradiol. Ovaries slash follicles are releasing this hormone called estradiol. It's a type of estrogen. And then that estradiol goes back to the brain and says, hey, I have plenty of follicles growing. Thank you. I don't need this signal anymore. So it gives this feedback loop. And the brain says, oh, cool. There's follicles. Awesome. the next hormone I'm going to release is luteinizing hormone. And that goes in and hits the ovaries again and says, hey, time to ovulate. So that's what triggers ovulation. And then the shell of the egg that just was released is called the corpus luteum. And that shell will produce progesterone for 2 weeks to help sustain a pregnancy if you do get pregnant. And if you don't, that corpus luteum kind of dissolves away, the progesterone drops off, and you get your next cycle.
Got it.
If you were to get pregnant in that cycle where the progesterone was released, ideally that progesterone will sustain its production. And that corpus luteum really should be healthy and vibrant enough to sustain that progesterone production for at least the first 3 months. And then after the first 3 months, the baby takes over the production of progesterone and it's not needed anymore.
Oh, cool.
But so those are so those are 3 hormones that we want to test: FSH, estradiol, and LH. And then we want to test something called AMH, which is anti-Müllerian hormone. That hormone is actually a lot misunderstood, I feel like. I've heard reproductive endocrinologists say, oh, this is like so important. It's the only hormone that's important. And I'm like, well, sort of, but one, it's not even an accurate hormone. So in theory, this is the ideal world scenario. Anti-Müllerian hormone is the hormone that the body will, or the ovaries release as an estimate of how many eggs there are, or follicles, potential follicles there are in the ovaries. When we start getting a lower number of follicles, the AMH will start to decrease. And AMH got really popular with the advent of IVF. So until in vitro fertilization, there was no real like estimate. They were just kind of like, we were shooting in the dark a lot. But in vitro fertilization really like developed this field of fertility from the Western medicine side to be able to have access to making babies outside of our bodies, right? And that was only in the 80s, right? Like late 80s maybe. So that number, it was discovered, I want to say in the 1990s. That number really put IVF in the ballpark of like saying, hey, if that number is low, we can say with good predictable chances that your IVF cycle is less likely to be successful.
Oh, okay.
However, that got construed or misunderstood to mean that your fertility is low. Does that make sense? So just because your chances for IVF are low doesn't mean your fertility is low. It just means you're not going to do well with IVF. So maybe you ought to find another way to get pregnant. Yeah. Maybe don't do the IVF cycle.
Got it.
But what ends up happening is a lot of women will go to their RE, reproductive endocrinologist, or OBGYN, do this AMH test, and discover, oh, my AMH is low, and then start freaking out because their AMH is low. And they're going to be told by their OB, oh, your fertility is going to be really difficult. You're not going to get pregnant. It's going to be really hard for you. You may need, not only do you need IVF, but you may need 3 to 6 cycles rather than 1 to 3. So they just, like, all the odds get stacked against you.
Got it.
And then you walk out of the office feeling like, oh shit, like what the heck?
So that AMH has been misconstrued. It's kind of a misconception that if that number is low, that your fertility is actually low.
Right. Yes.
Wow.
We have consistently seen that there is a point where it's too low. So that's definitely true. But we have also seen that there is one, you can increase your AMH, which when I say that in front of reproductive endocrinologists, they're like, oh, bullshit. It doesn't happen. And I was like, I'll show you study after study after study of people whose AMHs go up. I just had a patient recently who emailed me on Friday, and I was super excited for her because her AMH when we had started working together was 0.03, and we retested it because we were getting a whole battery of tests, and I was like, let's just throw it on there. Let's see what it's like now.
Yeah.
And she emailed me Friday like, is this correct? My AMH is 0.5, which is a huge, like it puts her from this is going to be really impossible and we might get to the end of your program and suggest that you still need an egg donor. And she knew that getting into it with me. And then 0.5 is like amazing. Like she could have a baby. She could maybe even have 2 babies at this point.
Wow.
Wow.
So just to give our viewers a sense, what are the types of things that, like, just briefly, that you can do to like increase those AMH numbers? Is it food, lifestyle? Is it more like intense types of therapies? What is it?
Yeah, it is. It's food and lifestyle is a good starting point. I think for most of the patients who we take on, so I think it's really easy to just like generalize it, right? We say, oh, we want to increase your AMH. Well, it's not always a guarantee that it's going to increase, right? And the way that I think about it, this patient is 32, by the way. So her AMH being so low was abnormal. And her FSH was off the charts. It was like 100 something.
Mm.
Ideally, we want that number below 10.
Oh, wow.
And then her estradiol was really low. It was like 7 or 10, something like that. And ideally, we want that between 30 and 50. So for her, it was like all of the hormones looked so out of whack that I told her there's a really good chance that this is not normal fertility issues, right? Like what I was thinking for her was you probably have something that I would label premature ovarian insufficiency, and a really good number of those cases have to do with autoimmune conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Perfectly what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
And when she heard that, she was like, "Oh, nobody's ever said that to me." And I asked her some more questions and I was like, "Did you have some intense stress like 3 to 5 years ago?" And she was like, "Oh my god, how did you know that?" And I was like, "Well, so there's this really weird connection that I see between stress triggers, FSH being off the charts, and autoimmune infertility."
Interesting.
And so she was like, "Okay, I'll do whatever. Like, tell me what to do." And literally her diet was relatively simple. Like she's Italian. So guess what? She was eating all the time.
Lots of
Gluten,
pasta and
right?
bread.
Like tons of pasta and bread.
Cheese, yeah.
Yep. And she wanted to like continue doing that. And I was like, "No, I'm sorry. Let's just take a break for a few months."
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't want to believe me, but obviously her AMH swinging up is like, hey, that gluten was really 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 not doing well for your body.
Yeah.
And we're still amidst doing more tests and figuring out what else is going on, because I don't think that's it for her. I feel like there's more.
Yeah, that's a really interesting like case, and that's an awesome example to kind of talk about somebody who you're specifically going through this process with, because I wanted to ask you, like, obviously, you know, our Canary group is a lot of sensitive people, and you know, the world that I come from and a lot of people who watch my stuff have Hashimoto's, and Neeyaz comes from a world of Graves and thyroid. So there's like, we wanted to ask you about, one, the connection between thyroid imbalances and women's hormones. So like PMS symptoms, infertility, you know, premenopause, those types of things, or like postmenopausal symptoms. So thyroid and women's hormones, but then again, that autoimmune layer and what you know about the progression of like how that affects everything.
Yeah, I think that so I treat thyroid a lot, and I feel like it's one of those things that doesn't get enough attention, right?
Yep.
So I was just saying on a podcast the other day, I was like, you have to test thyroid. If you're doing fertility, you have to test thyroid. And it cannot stop with the TSH plus reflex. So most doctors, even endocrinologists, will test your TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, which is produced not in your thyroid, but in your brain. And that is the signal for your thyroid to produce more thyroid hormone. However, TSH takes a really long time to change. So most of the time, someone with a high TSH or even a very low TSH, they've been struggling with thyroid stuff for a really long time before it gets discovered. The other piece of it is the antibodies. And at the minimum, like TPO antibodies and anti-TGA antibodies, but also thyroid stimulating immunoglobulins, those three I feel like are good for everyone to have tested if they're struggling with fertility, right? The number of times that I've told people, like, I'm sorry you got Hashimoto's, and they're like, what? I had no idea. And it's like such a common occurrence. And there's this whole world of just like autoimmune things happening, and we could get into philosophies of why that's happening, but
we will get into those philosophies.
I feel like it's a lot due to a non-exposure. So we're trying so hard to bubble ourselves or keep ourselves from experiencing anything that our ancestors experienced, right? Like I was saying to one of my patients, like, since when did chickenpox become such a huge thing to go through? Like every kid had chickenpox growing up. And now you have to get a chickenpox vaccine. So I'm not anti-vaccine, by the way. I'll just say that. But I do think that there's a fine balance between how much we protect against versus how much we allow our own immune system to build. And when that immune system doesn't have anything to direct its energy to, it directs it internally to itself.
It was so like, this is always the image that I think of when you talk about this sterilization of our world and our environment and our non-exposure. A couple years ago, I don't remember, 2018, 19 maybe, the IFM, Institute of Functional Medicine, their annual conference was on autoimmunity. And the keynote speaker, they did this big presentation on that. And I've heard these facts before, but on this huge screen in front of 1,500 doctors, they had these maps up there. And on the maps, they had, highlighted darkened areas of the parts of the world where the prevalence of autoimmune disease has skyrocketed and is just like out of control, which includes North America, and lots of like Western countries. And then the other map, where highlighted areas of where there's kind of still problems with like infections. So maybe there's hygiene issues, but there's a lot more like water contamination, or there's some sort of gut infection, or there's like parasites or helminths or these sort of things. Those maps were literally opposite. Like you could lay them on top of each other and then they'd fill up the whole world. But pretty much the parts of the world that have still, like, people get these infections, which have been a big part of our microbiome and has helped us actually develop our immune system. When we've eradicated all those parasites and infections, like you're saying, there's this underexposure, and that's where the prevalence of autoimmune disease has skyrocketed. And there's some fringes of Western medicine or alternative medicine that are using parasites or helminths or fecal transplants and actually implanting parasites and implanting infections into a person's body who has autoimmune disease, and they're seeing the autoimmune disease reverse.
Yes, exactly. Completely. One of my colleagues and really close friend of mine does this, and he's been trying to give me a parasite for forever. He's like, just take it. I'll send it to you. And I'm
what
like,
a gift.
no, I'm not ready for that yet. Like, I swear you'll take care of your allergies. You'll take care of a lot else too.
It's so funny. Most of my circle these days are sensitive women, and most of them have an autoimmune condition. But my best friend from childhood, her and I are opposites, and she eats everything. She has no autoimmune things, and I'm just like, I'm just waiting to get some of your poops that I can get rid of that. And then we balance each other out.
That's amazing.
So people
Wow.
doing kind of the fecal transplant
Yes,
or the
yeah.
kind of
That's it's basically his jam. He's like one of the
Wow.
leading doctors for this in the country.
So that's the other question. Another big topic we wanted to talk to you about was the microbiome, like
Yes.
probiotics or, like those types of things where we can, without transplanting someone else's poop into our colon, what are ways that we can either through a supplement or through foods or through fermentation or any of these things, playing in dirt, whatever it is, can you talk to us about the microbiome, how it impacts women's health? And we're also curious if you can talk a little bit about like the vaginal microbiome, because it's different than the oral or the gut,
Yeah,
or, they're all connected, and tell us
totally.
specifically about that.
Yeah, so definitely this is like the cutting edge of science right now, at least for fertility and women's health, is the vaginal microbiome.
Hmm.
And the simplest thing I'll start with is, even as much as we want diversity in our gut microbiome, we want non-diversity in
Hmm,
our vaginal microbiome.
interesting.
So our instinct is, oh, more probiotics, right? Versus like, no, we just want one, or really there's like two major strains in the vaginal area that are the leading microbes. And it's when there becomes like a diversity of microbes that we get all of the symptoms, like
Hmm.
smell and infection and yeast or whatever, like all of the issues that tend to run with that. As well as the kind this is like, it's coming soon. I think that those same issues are leading towards difficulty getting pregnant. So I think that there's a correlation there. We'll see more of that research coming soon. But I think for now, what I'm going with, at least for my patients, is you can test the microbiome. There's a lab that we work with called Juno, um, that will send you a kit and you do a little swab and send it back. And they'll tell us what's in your microbiome in your vagina.
Do you
Um,
actually do like a
so
vaginal swab, or is it an oral swab, or
vaginal
what?
swab, yeah.
Interesting.
Um, so that's a lot of fun. But I think as far as like supplements and things, there are a couple of probiotics that you can feel comfortable with. One is lactobacillus,
Mhm,
or even as simple as like yogurt, can be fine
mhm.
to put vaginally.
Oh, and
And
so
then yeah, just like a little bit of yogurt in there.
but
I
if you
don't
were to
actually
do the
know.
supplement, you don't put the capsule in there, right? You open up the capsule and put some of the powder in, or how do you do that?
So it really depends. You can put the capsule in if it's safe to use vaginally.
Oh,
So there are companies that make vaginally safe probiotics. You can kind
interesting.
of just insert it. That makes it super easy. And the main thing that I look for is that it just has like one or two strains of lactobacillus.
Got it.
The other probiotic or the other microbe that's really high in the vagina is called rhamnosus.
Mm,
And that's the other one that I kind of, that one needs to be oral, and it's in a couple of different like supplement brands that we
mhm.
use. The one that's coming to mind is Femicology, which is a brand by Dr. Tori Hudson. She's one of the leading like women's health naturopathic doctors. Um, so that those two are the things to focus on when it comes to the vaginal microbiome. And I think we'll see more and more of this. Like, we saw it in the gut microbiome arena. We saw like, oh, this strain is really good for XYZ. This strain is really good for XYZ. So that's coming soon. But I think as far as what we know right now, all we do know is that there is a connection. There is a there's definitely something that's happening with the vaginal tract in terms of women who have endometriosis, women with fibroids. They're making all of these links about, oh, if they have endometriosis, they likely have certain types of microbes in their vagina that can be linked to making it really hard to recover from endometriosis. So it's good. It's so exciting. It's probably one of my favorite topics.
So cool. The re-inoculation part of it, where part of it's supplements, but also like eating diversity of foods, especially plant foods, so that our microbiome.
Yes.
Because my understanding is that a lot of what happens in our oral and our gut microbiome, it does transfer other places. Like it transfers to our brain and to our vagina will sample and take what it needs. You don't have to insert it into.
Right. No, totally. I think a really easy place to start is to focus on the gut microbiome. And really, like, whatever is happening in the gut is being translated into the reproductive area. They touch, like they're right next to each other.
Yeah.
And this is probably like 2017, there was a study that came out that I think was like one of the best studies ever, which was essentially saying that if you have leaky gut or intestinal permeability in your gut, you have something that would correlate to intestinal permeability in your uterus, making it harder for you to sustain a pregnancy and making it easier for you to have autoimmune infertility. So, and it's essentially the same in the gut, right? If you have leaky gut, you're much likelier to have autoimmune conditions than if you don't. So, I think like healing the gut is always a really good, safe starting point. And doing all of the things that we would do for the gut microbiome, as far as feeding the diversity, making sure you have fiber, making sure you have prebiotics that feed the gut bacteria, and then eating like a diverse diet. So it's really easy to I was saying somewhere, it's like most adult humans choose 25 to 30 things to eat over and over again. But if we can really instill, like, as much as our brain likes consistency, our gut likes diversity. So if we can instill this idea of like, oh, where can I add diversity? Where can I add diversity? Where can I rotate the things that I really love? It's going to go a long ways in helping to sustain a good, healthy microbiome that then supports the uterine microbiome, vaginal microbiome, as well as the permeability aspect of the uterus if you are trying to get pregnant.
That's so fascinating. Yeah, because I think as I get more into the depths of functional medicine too, it's excuse me, they talk about leaky gut a lot, but there's leaky brain, there's leaky lungs, there's leaky skin, there's leaky barrier systems. But I have not heard much about leaky uterus, which is fascinating because of course, like all of our cells are communicating that way. But it's all related. But speaking of which, so that's the good stuff we want in there, the good microbiome, the stuff that helps communication and barriers. What about the flip side of it, the stuff we don't want? Because there's, this myth about like, oh, if you're having problems or infections, you should wash or douche or, like, can you talk to us about how the vagina is self-cleaning and, kind of the other things we can do and the stuff we should keep away, such as chemicals, cleaning products, but also like hygiene products or any sort of things that could be negatively affecting the vaginal microbiome or women's hormones, things like that.
And the pH balance too.
But sorry, what did you say?
And the pH balance also.
Yes, absolutely. You guys touched on all the exact bullet points. It's like douching, don't do it. just throw it away. Don't ever touch it again. Don't
Don't
put
be a
soap into
douche.
your vagina. Like,
Don't
just
be a
don't.
douche.
Don't be a douche. So that, I think that's really easy to do. The harder stuff, and the stuff that I think we could get a lot of like bang for our buck in the sense of like changing our lifestyle patterns, is to stop using pads and tampons.
Mm.
Tampons specifically, but pads also are really like pretty close to our vaginal tract. Um, the chlorine in either of those products changes the pH. It's going to make your vagina more acidic. Or actually, no, chlorine is more basic, right? I think it's going to change your pH. Don't do it. I don't know which direction it goes. Just don't do it.
So is this even true for, say, that there's like lines of, I guess, tampons or pads now that are saying there's no dyes, there's no chlorine, there's no
bleach. Yeah.
Yes.
Is it?
So, yes, the chlorine free ones definitely better, but I'm gonna build on that in just a second and say that unless it's organic,
Right.
unless these pads and tampons are organic, cotton is the most glyphosate sprayed plant that there is known to human history.
Wow, yeah.
Take that glyphosate ridden plant and put it right into our vaginas, and that the glyphosate, at least there's studies on this with the gut, it's shown to kill our microbiome. So my assumption is it's probably doing something very similar in the vagina.
Yeah.
So let's like not take the chance until the research comes out. I'm like, I don't need research on this.
Yeah, just to kind of elaborate exactly on that point. I mean, when you think about glyphosate, it's Roundup. It's a, weed killer. It's supposed to kill life. So I've had patients too who have complex autoimmune health problems, and we run deep environmental toxin panels, mold, candida. They have all of that. And in addition, we run glyphosate and see if there's glyphosate in their body. And we could spend years trying to re-inoculate them and trying to like give them probiotics and get rid of the mold and get rid of the candida. But until you get rid of the glyphosate in the body, it's going to kill whatever life
that you put.
Yes, exactly. I think glyphosate is one of the worst things. We don't want it in our food. We should not want it in our hygiene products. So that's the minimum. I have noticed like 90% of patients will come back within a month or two of starting to use something besides their pads and tampons with decreased pain levels. So women, even with endometriosis, come back and they're like, oh, my pain is so much better. All they did was change their lifestyle to using cups, period panties, cloth pads. You have so many options to choose from these days, but really like moving away. And yes, you can go organic. That's maybe an easy solution. I don't love the go organic option with pads and tampons because one, they're contributing to the environmental load and burden of the planet. These things are going to go and sit and take at least 50 years to biodegrade, if at all. So we're contributing to the waste on the planet. But two, I don't trust it. Like, I have a really hard time trusting companies that say they're making organic cotton pads and tampons. Some of them may be great. I don't know for sure, but I feel like because there's very minimal standards that they have to pass, it just makes me concerned, like how much regulation are you actually doing for this? And given that women's health is always the least prioritized thing in this country, I don't trust it. Like, I'm not sure that you're actually regulating this as much as we would like to see.
So the top alternatives that you're talking about are the Diva cups, which are the silicone in cups you insert. And then you also mentioned period panties, which kind of absorb the period, and then you wash them and they're reusable. Or what was the last one you said? It was cloth pads.
Yeah. And
So those are
just
made
like
out of cotton and they're just
cotton.
washable.
Yeah, and you can buy those organic cotton. There's a lot of like small, very small companies that are doing organic cloth pads.
Mm.
And they don't cost a lot, like you're gonna invest maybe $30 to $50 into whatever option you choose, but
Mhm.
it's reusable. You're gonna be
Yeah.
using this for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, however long you
Yeah.
like that you can take care of this product.
Yeah,
So
so
It's
you
cheaper in
just
the long run.
wash those, right? Like
yes,
they're cotton, but they're
exactly.
not disposable, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That is
So, yeah, I'm curious too because I'm like always, curious about these options and everything. And there's just certain things that, pop up all the time. And of course, we're seeing information all the time. I just saw, I think yesterday, and I was really kind of bummed about this, but I saw that the brand Thinks, the period panties, have PFAs in them. And it
Oh,
was like, yeah, and I was like, that was one of the ones that I had bookmarked, and I was like, okay, when I get, I'm going to invest in these and buy them. But do you have anything kind of to talk about, like the different versions of like where? I mean, I guess we don't have to do it on there too because
Yeah.
we're going to have a download guide for our members in our mini guide, but we can put like top brands and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think that it's just kind of like frustrating because you want to go for these alternatives, but then it's like, I don't know if it was just Instagram marketing that got to me where it was like Thinks was everywhere.
Right.
And then I just found out they had PFAs in them.
So this was actually something came out like June, somewhere between June and August of last year about the things. And it was right when I was like starting to collaborate with them. And I was like, whoa, hold the phone. Like,
Yeah.
what's happening here? Um, and I actually had the opportunity to speak to the founder, and she was like, absolutely not. This is like, we do a lot of studies on our product and blah blah blah. And the PFAs, if so, first of all, I should say they now have organic option.
Oh,
So
great.
it's PFA free. If
Awesome.
there was PFA, but they said that their studies and the people that they were working with on testing said that there was not.
Awesome.
So there was a little bit of like unclarity about, is it companies that are trying to like target them as
Yeah.
a innovator and just are
Yeah.
haters, or is it actually an issue? And if it is an issue, what was going to be their solution? And their solution was like, forget it, we're just going to make an organic version
Amazing.
and not ask you,
great.
not have any issues with it.
That's why we have experts like you, because
Exactly.
I see this stuff and then it's just concerning and kind of disheartening because it's like you want to make these, different choices in terms of, it's not as convenient. It is an investment to do that one time, but then you're not sure if it's like really legit. But yeah, I just noticed, sorry, we have comments here. We have people watching and asking questions. Teresa says hi.
Oh my
She
God.
also mentioned that she heard that there was BPA and bleach in our toilet paper. So not just
Yeah.
pads, all of that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like anything that touches the vagina or anywhere, right?
Yeah, it's like, what is our obsession with white, you guys? Like, why
Right?
does everything have to be white? I just don't understand it. Like, why do we need to bleach toilet paper?
Yeah. It doesn't.
It's going in the toilet. It's literally like a waste of time and energy.
But I think, yeah, from our perspective here, when we're talking about immune health, autoimmune health, sensitive people who react to chemicals, all that, we really want to focus on how the vagina or, even parts in our genital area, there's mucous membranes, and those mucous membranes absorb everything. So you want to be really careful about what touches them.
Yeah.
Let's all invest in a bidet.
Yeah. So I don't know if our viewers here are familiar with this. And I don't, I don't clearly know both of your hygiene habits, but I'm obsessed with bidets and in Persian culture, we have, we call them a shalang, but we come from, brown backgrounds, and our parents have instilled in us and our cultures and our family that you always wash after you go to the bathroom. So even if you're using toilet paper, it's usually just to kind of tamp it dry. It's not really for wiping or cleaning. It's you wash and then you just pat it dry and go on your day. So
Yeah.
That's a great alternative. And I would, also for menstruation, I hate being somewhere during my week of menstruation when I don't have a bidet. So if you women have not tried a bidet for, like daily use, but also for menstrual use, it's like
game changer. And you can see ones that are like attached
wait.
to your toilet seat, like they
Yes.
just install right on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been totally like on my list for so many years. I'm like, I really need a bidet. It feels like such a luxury though.
It is pretty great.
I have to convince my husband. We're gonna
Yeah, actually, we did not include this on our mini guide, but it's officially going on our mini guide. We do a video walkthrough for you guys in our club. Show you how to install a good one.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Teresa says that she would always wash her cotton, like if it wasn't organic, but is that not good enough? Because these chemicals, they're just like, right? They stay in
sort of
glyphosate.
From what I've heard, cotton, like the stuff that we wear, for a really long time, I was obsessed. I was like, everything has to be organic cotton clothes only. And what I actually found was like after the first 3 washes, the amount of pesticides and toxins that are on the clothing are really minimal. So that's where I've found like, you can't, I think it's easy for us to be like, oh, you should do everything organic all the time. And in reality, like it's just not feasible, right? Like if you look at some of, or at least for me, I was like, oh no, I can't be walking around in that. That's just not gonna work for me. So organic cotton clothing is great if you can do that, but if it doesn't work for you, then I would just say like, yeah, washing it 3 or 4 times first before you start wearing it really eliminates the number of chemicals that are going to be on it. And better yet, you can recycle clothing. Like that's a thing. And that is going to, it's already free of toxins. And you're helping the environment. So anytime that I can.
Yeah, it's an interesting fact to know, because I think I was a really tall person. I mean, I am, but like clothes would always be short on me. So I would hate to wash them. So like my favorite thing was to bring them home from the store and just wear them before they shrunk in the wash. And my mom would freak out. She's like, you have to wash everything before you wear it. And it's just fascinating to like see these habits that, sometimes they're intuitive, but also just washing things. It does actually help kind of clear out toxins a little bit. And yeah, so we're just sidetracking.
We're just all over the place.
Yeah, we are. But I want to kind of go back to the toxins and so we talked about feminine hygiene products, and toilet paper and things that touch your lady parts. We talked about don't be a douche. Are there other chemicals, toxins, even like makeup, perfumes, talc, all that stuff? Like, tell us more what you know.
Definitely. All the chemicals that are going onto our skin are also going into our bodies. So if you wouldn't eat it, you probably shouldn't put it on your body. And for my clients, I usually have a list of like, here's all the things that you can change out, right? Like makeup is a really easy one, I find, because there are so many companies that are doing toxin-free makeup.
Yeah.
The thing, so I found this recently. My husband comes home with all kinds of products. He loves like body wash and shampoo. I don't know. It's his thing, right? So he comes home with this thing, and I'm like, on the front of the label, it says naturally derived ingredients, 97% naturally derived ingredients.
Red flag.
So instantly, I'm like, this man bought this because he thought he was going to impress me. Let me go and look what's in the ingredient list. And sure enough, it's like all toxins. And I'm like, man, like the marketing scheme in this country is just off the chain. It's like you can fool extremely intelligent people with something on the label that looks like it's natural, right? Naturally derived doesn't actually mean natural. Organic doesn't, in the health and beauty industry, doesn't actually mean a whole lot.
Right.
So you can have organic and still have a bunch of toxins in it. because it's organically derived. But what the heck does that mean by the time it's converted to a chemical? So it's so tricky, and it's really important to educate ourselves wherever possible. One of the resources that I like to share a lot is the Think Dirty app. You can scan any label and it will tell you where it is on the scale of clean to dirty.
Oh, cool.
EWG.org, that's another resource.
Love that one.
There are companies that don't necessarily label things organic, natural, whatever, and they're all actually really clean. And then there are companies that label all kinds of stuff on the front of it to think that they're going to sell. One, it's going to be more expensive because they have all the labels. But two, it's going to be actually still have toxins in it. So it's really important to eliminate what you can wherever you can. And then I think the other thing that I find a lot is cookware. So cooking, like we're all into organic, and then we're making this amazing food, but our cookware is really crappy, right? Like, what's the point?
Yeah. I know, and that's kind of a whole rabbit hole too. It took me a couple years to swap out things in my kitchen and my bath, and that's that's the sort of stuff we support our club members. We give them guides and checklists and stuff they can go through because it's just crazy. There's so much marketing on the internet that they go, oh, the newest like nonstick pan and it's all natural, but it's like, no, you don't want to be using that.
You're like, why is it nonstick? What's happening?
Cookware.
I totally bought into the new ones that are like copper on the inside, and it said all natural, PFOA free, something else free. And this is how they get you. It's like really easy to say what it's free of, but you could be BPA free and put in BPS. Did that help us anything? No, it didn't. It actually made it a lot worse. So it's really like us staying on top of it and staying in advance of all of these marketing schemes is really, really important. So
I mean, it's a big topic. It's a big frustration, and I'm just kind of looking at the clock because I'm having so much fun talking to you that I want to hit some more of these female topic stuff. But we could go down lots of rabbit holes, so we might have to just talk about cookware. Cookware and bidets. So what are some of these other? We had a list of like all kinds of questions.
I'd love to know a little bit about what kind of routine or rituals that you have, that you practice daily, whether it's like a morning ritual or an evening ritual that helps to benefit you, helps to set you up for the day or rebalance you.
I usually like to meditate, and I like to do. I've gotten obsessed with this like high intensity interval training workout on YouTube. This woman that I found, I was like, I need to lose some weight. So I started doing this workout, and within like 3 or 4 weeks, I was like, oh, I'm shedding some pounds, and I haven't done a lot. It's like 15 minutes, right? So that's been really a game changer. And when I don't do it, I'm starting to feel like more tired and not as energized through my day. So like, all right, something here is working. So that those two are kind of my cornerstones. And then I have a lot of mind body techniques that I bring in as I need them. So this is one of my little new gadgets. It is essentially a pack that has something called Moxa in it. So there's these little, let me show you.
It looks like a little top hat.
You can do it that way too. But Moxa are these little herbal things that acupuncturists use. So normally you would get this and your acupuncturist would like hover it over your body to the herb that's in here is known to like go through your acupuncture meridians. It's really fascinating.
Oh wow.
Just through the air, just like as a steam going in.
Cool.
Wow.
So, I found this on Amazon and I was like, oh, I have to try it. So so I got it, and it like, you attach the Moxa in there, you like light it up, and then you can put the little metal thing that's in here um
Oh,
into onto your body. So let's say you have pain on your shoulder, you just like put it on there, and then like if you got to do work or whatever, you can tie the strap
oh,
around
I'm
you.
obsessed with this.
We'll get that information from you and add it to our mini guide for
Okay,
our
you got
members.
it.
So yeah, that would be
Something
awesome.
is that something that could help people who have like period cramping or
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you can wrap it around your abdomen when you're having period pain. You can I get a lot of like neck and shoulder pain.
Mhm.
That's the place I hold all my stress. So I was
Mhm.
walking around with it on my neck on the weekend.
We'll
My
pop that
husband's
back
like,
there.
"You're stinking up the whole house."
Um,
Oh,
so now,
wow.
there's
Full
just so much I
disclosure,
want to talk to you about.
it'll make your house smell like charcoal, full disclosure,
Oh,
but
okay.
Oh, not the worst smell. Not the
Um,
worst.
I'm like, it's a smell I can tolerate for the benefits that I get.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, get it. This is kind of perfect transition because there's so many topics that I want to talk to you about because I know you know about a lot of things. But that mind body stuff and kind of the somatic things. I want to ask you if you can give us some intro pointer stuff to like Ayurvedic medicine and how that is related to how women experience different things, like different things in their cycle or like seasonally or things like that. Like just
Yeah.
give us some cool tidbits about
Yeah.
Ayurvedic medicine and women's health.
Okay, awesome. So Ayurveda is an ancient Indian medicine, and the foundation of it is that we have what is our constitutional body type. So we can be Vata, Pitta, Kapha, or some blend of those three together. Vata is like sort of the air element, Pitta is sort of the fire element, and Kapha is the earth element. These are my really generalized
Mhm.
terms. It's actually combinations of elements, but we keep it simple.
Yeah.
Um, so once you understand what your body type is, you can then live the lifestyle and live in tune with your own body type.
Mhm.
So for me, I'm a Vata Pitta, which means I have a lot of air and a lot of fire. That means I get angry super easily and spacey, like really, really spacey. So for years, I would walk around and like, where are my keys? I can't find my keys. Or the new one is, where are my AirPods? Where are they? I attached a tile to everything that I cannot find because, like, as much as I tried to be like, oh, I'm going to be more mindful and I'm going to try and remember everything, the amount of energy that it takes a Vata body type to remember stuff is not worth it.
Mm.
So, if you know that you're this body type, you need to just adapt and say, what are the tools that are available to me so that I'm not spending my energy and time trying to remember where stuff is and spending my time in doing the things that I'm really good at.
Yeah.
So, it's created this whole like lifestyle shift in the sense of I need to do the things that are going to help me ground. I need to be grounded. Um, Fat is really, really important for Vata types. So all of my food has a little extra tablespoon of oil on it. Um, just like really simple things that you can do in
Mhm.
your day-to-day life to make sure that you stay in tune with your body and not throw that body type out of whack.
Yeah,
Uh,
so I would love to do a whole month on this theme coming up because it's just so fascinating. So
yeah,
hopefully we can have you back to talk more about like how we can determine those specific body types because the goal with it that doesn't really exist in Western medicine, which is why I love mixing it, is
Mhm.
that you determine your body type and then there's things you can do to actually calm the excess energies and bring up the energies that are a little bit more like difficult or deficient for
yeah,
you.
yes,
And it's more from a mind body perspective. It's not like, oh, you have low vitamin C, take a bunch of vitamin C.
right,
It's like you said, you're easily distractible or you forget things. then we're going to take a mind-body approach to balancing that. Whereas you maybe also, like you said, you get angry easily or hot-tempered. There's things to cool that. And you can do that through food. You can do that through lifestyle, pacing, the time you wake up, the time you go to bed. So mind body stuff it's super fun and super cool. And then when you start doing that, it especially another aspect I love about Ayurvedic is it has those cycles. So much of what you talked about, they have daily cycles, it has monthly cycles, it has yearly and seasonal cycles. So within those recommendations, you diversify your diet, so you're not always eating the same things. You're also balancing your monthly hormones, all of that. So super fun, in-depth stuff.
So good. Absolutely. I have a little quiz on my website if people are curious and want to know how to get your body type. It's really simplified, so it's not going to give you like, hey, you're Vata plus Pitta. It'll give you your primary.
Got it.
And then it gives you lifestyle suggestions based on what your body type is. So another thing for Vata, for example, is to schedule everything. So like being really scheduled is a way to like ground your energy and not be all over the place.
Yeah.
Because if you leave it to me, I'll be like distracted and going off a completely different rail. So it's really like what I love about Ayurveda is exactly that. Like if you know your type and you know how to keep it in check, you can really walk through life with more ease and grace.
And clarity.
And hopefully prevent diseases and all kinds of other stuff. But I think even just from optimizing life, it's really great for that.
Definitely.
Before we wrap up here, we did have a Q&A from a member come in, and it's a specific question. And, we'll talk about it, but we'll talk about it a little more generally because in the group and the club and, on our one-on-ones, we do more of the specific things. But, we have Nicole saying that she wanted to talk a little bit about ferritin levels and how she's 40, has Hashimoto's, which most of our members do, or Graves, or some sort of thyroid imbalance, and then heavy periods, not on birth control. So I think just to kind of not get into someone's personal health history, we'll just talk about like, maybe inflammatory markers or heavy periods or those sort of things. Can you just give us a 2-minute rundown of that? I know it's a deep topic, but just some ideas of like heavy periods and what people can look into.
Well, so I think she already said it. So heavy periods are actually going to connect back to low iron levels. It's really bizarre, but our body does this weird thing. Oh, you don't have enough iron? Let me shed more blood. Because that's going to solve it. This is like the thing that I see so often. So the way to adapt for it is really to get ahead of the whole system. So in terms of iron, with Hashimoto's, you want to be careful that you're not eating foods that are inflammatory, right? Like you want to stay away from the gluten and dairy and stuff like that, which you're probably already doing since you're in this group. But then in terms of iron, the one that I find works well for people with Hashimoto's is Optiferin C from Pure Encapsulations. It's a brand of iron that I think will really, really help. And then I think I saw someone say a comment of something about pads, which I would agree, like getting away from the things that have glyphosate are going to be really supportive to having more easeful periods, and ideally like help you bleed less, which then will help you preserve more of your iron.
Awesome.
There are a couple of other nutritional deficiencies that tend to piggyback off of iron, zinc and selenium being two of them. So just making sure that your mineral levels are optimized will help support iron, as well as like the benefits of selenium and zinc for the thyroid is great.
Awesome. Thank you. That was actually a wonderful 2-minute description of that. Or I don't know if it was 2 minutes, but just a quick intro into some, really complex webs of stuff that really have to do with that functional medicine approach. And looking at like all kinds of mineral balances and gut health. So yeah, this was a pleasure. Is there anything, Neeyaz, you want to talk about, throw in?
I honestly think we could talk for another 5 hours. So if I ask anything, we're going to go into a rabbit hole. But we would love to have you again, definitely.
Yeah, I'd love to be back.
Yeah, so we want to again thank Dr. Aumatma for being here with us today. We focus on women's health, but we got into a lot of rabbit holes. So if you
Hopefully good rabbit holes.
Yeah, if you missed the beginning of this, if you are a member, we will have all the recommendations and some extra resources. I might do a bidet guide for you.
Why not?
Because that came up, and I don't know, I hadn't thought about talking about that, but it's definitely in our members group. So if you are not, you can click on the link in the comments, join our members group, and we'll have all those resources for you. Dr. Aumatma, if somebody is on this journey and they're struggling with their hormones or women's health, fertility, and they want natural solutions, can you tell them how they can get more information or work with you? What's your process? How do you work with people?
Yeah. So we have essentially like a 5-month protocol that we do to walk you from beginning to end, to support your fertility and optimize your fertility, so that A, you can either get pregnant naturally, or B, you can be like way steps closer to getting your IVF cycle to be successful. I was just talking to my husband and he was like, "Oh, I didn't realize that even people that don't get pregnant naturally go on to have these like easy pregnancies when they go to IVF." And I was like, "Yeah, totally. Of course." And he's like, "No, I just didn't get it." It's so cool to like talk to someone who's not in my field, because he often reflects back and is like, "Why don't you ever tell people that?" So we can help with the process, and the best way to find out if we could support you is through our fertility insight session. So it's a $1 session that's on our website. It's an hour with one of my colleagues. And it's just on our website. So holisticfertilitycenter.com. And if you would like to connect or ask some questions or whatever, you can hit me up on Instagram. I'm at holistic_fertility_doctor. Holistic fertility doctor. I think it still comes up without the underscores.
Yeah, and you're generally in the Bay Area, Northern California, but you do work with people all over.
Yeah. We are mostly in the Bay Area. I can't be your doctor if you're outside of the Bay Area, but if you have a local doctor who's super cool and wants to like collaborate or support you even with what suggestions we would suggest for you, we have a lot of people who do that, and they have a doctor on the ground who's like, "I'm happy to order your tests and prescriptions and whatever." And then they'll consult with us and get all the strategy or the stuff that I can offer, and they go on to have just as successful of a
It's a
time.
special Dr. Aumatma process of looking at the big picture and talking about all of those things that we discussed today. So it was such a pleasure having you.
Great meeting you.
Yeah. Likewise. Great to meet you, Neeyaz, and thank you for having me.
Of course.
So thanks everyone for joining and participating. It's always so much more fun when we get questions and comments from everyone in the community. But we will see you guys again next month. And if you are watching this later and you're interested in all those guides and private resources we talked about, just check out the link and join our Canary Club. And we will have Dr. Aumatma back to talk all about Ayurvedic medicine soon. So we'll see you guys soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.